Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman, Lance Miliaccio, breaking it down just for you. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use. TheBigMig.com, The Big Mig on Rumble, on X, everywhere. They're at the tip of the spear, ladies and gentlemen. We are truth tellers. This is Liberty Roundtable Live for, what is it, already May 28th in the year of our Lord, 2025. Hour 2 of 2, promoting God, family, country, protecting life, liberty, and property. Lance, this is just crazy what we see. They've got the mainstream press is absolutely up in arms. They don't know what to do. They claim Trump ambushed this president of South Africa. It's a lie. The abuses have been going on for decades, and it's getting worse, and Trump's bringing it up. And the problem is you can't defend the whites. You're not allowed to defend white people at any time. And if you do, wow, boy, howdy. Does it go bad for you? And that's really the key here. I've been doing this forever. They call me a white supremacist. It's a complete lie. But that's what they say. And that's the narrative. So you asked me last hour, are they going to, change? Are they going to tell the truth? Are they going to go, wow, we didn't realize that? No. And that's the point is when you have, maybe they were deceived. Maybe you're Joe Blow reporter for the Associated Press or NPR or who knows who. And you kind of think, wow, man, it's just not true. My journalists, my buddies, I know they researched it. It's not true. Then you find out it's factually true. Are you going to basically then double down and lie, or are you going to own it? And I say if you double down and lie, you got blood on your hands. And this is kind of the point that we're making. Why are we funding this kind of stuff? Why is the government involved in the media anyway? Where in the supreme law of the land, whether it be the congressional, whether it be the president, the executive branch, or the judiciary branch, where does it say they should be involved in the media? And they shouldn't at all, except for I have no problem with the White House having whitehouse.gov/wire and telling their side of the story. They have every right to publish and tell their side of the story internally. But they're funding all these news organizations that literally have been caught lying. And as you mentioned, they shouldn't be allowed to tell those lies. I think they should be able to tell the lies just on their own dime. If they want to lie, we want to tell the truth. Over time, truth seems to destroy fake or false. Good money, like constitutional currency, intrinsic value currency, tends to drive out bad currency, fake money, and this kind of stuff. So the truth will set you free is the term they use for this. But I think it's really important to understand that and to really realize, hey, you've got a decision, journalist, reporter, whatever you want to call yourself. Are you going to, now that you've got the knowledge, are you going to tell the truth? Are you going to change and say, you know what, I wasn't correct on this? Jake Tapper, on one hand, you say, is starting to tell the truth. Hey, Biden was a clown and Biden is incompetent totally. The problem with Jake Tapper is he knew that all along and he's lied as long as it made him money to lie. And now he's basically publishing a book telling the truth. Now he's trying to make money on the truth, but it's only for money. He only did an about face because he had to. The evidence was too overwhelming. And so you look at the Jake Tappers of the world and you say they're a clown show for dishonesty and they're only in it for the cash. When cash is telling the truth, they'll do that. So it's a follow the money discussion. But many of these people, they're not ever willing to tell the truth. They've hung their hat and their whole careers on lies. And if they tell the truth now, most of their careers will be ended. Tapper was a unique one to get out in front of it and pretend he's for the American people. But he got caught lying, and now he's telling the truth and making money on it, Lance.
Yeah. I mean, and again, this just goes to show that they'll sell their souls. I mean, Tapper shows his lack of integrity by doing exactly what he's doing because, of course, now he's just taken the position that he can make some money, he can promote his new book, and now he wants to tell the American public the truth. And maybe that's what we need, Sam. Maybe what needs to happen is there needs to be different categories of news agencies. Maybe you only get the AAA rating like Moody's would give you if you tell the truth. And if you decide you want to use your opinions and act like those are facts, kind of like The View, then maybe you should get an F- rating. And maybe that's what we need are ratings by some independent group of truth tellers. We couldn't leave it to the government because you know what would happen. They would just be paid ratings. Maybe we need an independent party that rates news agencies for facts and truth that has no political bias. I don't even know if that's possible, but let's face it, Tapper's just one of the many. He's just now deciding that the money's not there. And I want to tell you something about money that I see on social media a lot. There's a lot of paid operatives on social media. There's a couple of brothers called the Krasenstein brothers. You've got people like Brooklyn Dad, JoJo from Jers, Bill Crystal. These are all people that have received payments from different groups. There's one agency out of Chicago that pays like Chris Mowry and Harry Sisson. And they get paid to disseminate what I consider fake news or to propel narratives like the ambush narrative or it's a threat to our democracy narrative, whatever the narrative is, or Zelensky's Winston Churchill. They will jump on board because they're being paid to do it. You will immediately see right after USAID got shut down, there was a quiet period where none of them were posting because I believe in some fashion they had been receiving money from USAID. So all of a sudden they were quiet. And then they came back on. So they must have figured out, the Democrats or these different foundations or NGOs or super PACs must have figured a different way to funnel them money. Because all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks of dead quiet, they came back online. And that just goes to show the lack of integrity and loyalty of so many of these people that just like Tapper, they will sell themselves out for an easy dime. And I think what's disgusting about it is, you know, if the money is going to get doled out, of course, you know this, you don't apply for any grants. I don't apply for any grants. I'm not trying to offer myself to be bought. That same agency in Chicago tried to buy me off about a year and a half ago, and they offered some good money. They offered me $25,000 a month to actually only be able to disseminate news in a certain way. And it came with a list of topics I could talk about and topics I could not talk about. And it was a guarantee after 90 days of playing their game, they would give me an additional 30% increase. So you're talking about some pretty large number here, over $30,000 a month after the 90-day period. I turned it down, of course.
Back in the day, we used to call that the Velvet Hammer.
The Velvet Hammer. I love it. And it felt like a Velvet Hammer. You know, it said I couldn't talk positively about vaccine, you know, about the Muslims. I couldn't talk negatively about Jews. I couldn't talk about vaccine hesitancy or anything about the pandemic that was negative. I couldn't call it the plandemic as an example. It came with a whole list of just different guidelines. It was obvious that it was just a bribe or a payoff to stop me from doing what I was doing. Of course, I turned it down. But I would have loved to have had that money. It would have been nice if I was actually appreciated by the right and you were appreciated by the right. Not because they were going to buy what we were doing, just because they appreciated the fact they were going to support us and run some commercials and they were going to run some political ads. They don't even offer to do that with us. And that's the crazy part. And people ask, why were the Democrats so effective for so long? Not now, but why were they so effective for so long in controlling the narratives out there? It's because they doled out a crazy amount of money, Sam.
They did. And a lot of the latest is social media. Many of these people are second tier, third tier, whatever you want to say. They're way down the total pole. But they, by money and by propaganda and media manipulation, they forced them to become first tier. And the proof in the pudding is Joe Biden. He couldn't even talk. But yet he's like, hey, I'm inviting a bunch of these social media people to the White House. We're going to go ahead and reward them and support them for doing such a great job. That's how they elevate. I wish our side would do that. I wish Trump would invite a bunch of us to the White House and say, hey, you know what? I want to reward and thank these people for their diligence and telling the truth, for their fair, honest reporting. Whether we agree or disagree on everything isn't important. What matters is that they really are telling the truth and doing their very best to be genuine who, what, when, where, why reporters kind of thing. And their commentary may not be perfectly aligned with what I want, but they have every right to say what they want to. We should do that too, but of course we didn't. Now, back in the day, George Bush, the ones that called him gracious, they all got to broadcast from the White House lawn. They all got to eat steak with George Bush back in the day, and they were basically told not to report that they attended until after the fact. A few of them basically said, yeah, we went there, but I can't tell you what we talked about because I had to agree not to tell. And I would go to the White House if Trump invited me. But if Trump invited me to the White House with rules of secrecy or rules with control of what I could say and not say or report or not report about it, I would refuse to go. But we digress. Tier 1 has been the National Public Radio, the PBS, the funding through, what's this stupid thing called? USAID or whatever. It's the funding of all these media things that control the narrative. And thank heavens Trump has exposed it, and Trump has called a halt to the con game. What I think is going to happen, though, is that there's going to be lawsuits, and oh boy. Anyway, NPR is at the top of the stack because they've been getting tons of government money. And now that Trump's trying to pull that money by executive order, they are rioting and suggesting that, oh my gosh, there won't even be any media anymore, Lance.
Yeah. And, and this is my problem. Here's a news agency that based by the title, right? You would think that this is going to be really neutral, that it's just going to give an equal playing field of news without a bunch of opinions, and they're going to tell the truth. And they haven't been telling the truth for a very long time.
Go ahead and skip the break. Continue, Lance.
NPR has been so left-leaning for so long, and now they're upset because Trump is cutting their taxpayer lifeline. They're out suing because they feel this sense of entitlement to continue doing what they're doing. And at the end of the day, I'm not okay with this. I'm infuriated by the waste of government money. Our government was not supposed to be this overgrown, bloated, festering pool of corruption. And in my opinion, it's really pay to play. It's bribery. These media sources like NPR, like PBS, they only tell the story for one side of the tracks. It's just like, in my opinion, the Apple news cycle that's on a phone, on a cell phone. Tim Cook makes sure that news cycle is completely against the administration when it comes to Donald Trump. You can see that every other story has some negative spin on it. And that's not really what the American public deserves. I don't think that's what they want or they deserve. But people have been listening to NPR. I think they get 40 million listeners a week. And one of the most disgusting parts of this, I live in Colorado, as you know, and you know that 3 of the Colorado-based public radio affiliates have now also filed lawsuits in federal court claiming that cutting off government money violates their First Amendment rights. No, it doesn't. Since when does the First Amendment say we're going to fund you to promote one-sided news? Show me where in the Constitution it says that.
If that's true, though, hold on. If that's true, Lance, then NPR needs to demand that you and I get a check, don't they?
Of course. They need to say that we just realized that the Big Mig Show on Rumble and Sam Bushin's Liberty Roundtable Live and the Liberty News Radio Network haven't been getting any money, and we feel bad about that. So we want you to now split our money down the middle and make sure that if you think we're left-leaning, that you give an equal amount of money to the right. And in fact, we should just make a class action. We should just jump on these lawsuits we can all sue and litigate.
Don't you think by, like, slaves, though, don't you think we deserve some what do they call that?
Retribution?
Not retribution, but we get pay for how abused.
Oh yeah, yeah. You would get compensatory and punitive damages because you didn't get paid this whole time.
Yeah, but what's the term they call that? They want to give it to the slaves too. What is that called?
You're talking about
reparations.
Reparations. Yeah.
I kept thinking retributions, and I knew it was reparations.
Well, I want some retribution.
Why don't we get reparations?
And I want some reparations.
Man? I mean, I've been in there for 30 years, Lance. How much would I get?
I got this. What do we want? We want reparations. When do we want them? We want them now.
Now.
Yeah, we can do a little chant here. What do we want? We want reparations. When do we want them, Sam?
Reparations. When do we want them? Now. How much do we want? Exactly. Just add zeros.
Just add a bunch of zeros and we'll be okay.
Start with a positive number and add zeros.
But that's the point, right? At the end of the day, how does NPR think that the First Amendment justify them being paid to disseminate one-sided news, number one? Number two, okay, if it's really a national public radio channel, then how come we all don't get a voice on it? How come NPR doesn't come over to Liberty News Radio and say, Sam, we realize that we need a show like you on here. We want you to come on and we're going to pay you this much to do it. That's not what they do. If we go through all their news for the last 10 or 15 years and we listen to the stories and we look at the stories they're disseminating, you'll see that it really leans in one manner. It's not neutral news. And my comment is, in this case, if you're not going to do the job based on the requirements and you've been given an excessive amount of money, so why don't we claw the money back? Why is it that now they're going to sue because this is basically going to put them out of business because they've unfairly manipulated the system and they've manipulated the American public? Why shouldn't they face the consequences of their actions? And in fact, I believe that if we started checking out all the people over at NPR, I bet you there's some people that have enriched themselves beyond anything you could possibly imagine, that have amassed huge financial estates based on the backs of the American public. And not because they did the job correctly, but because they played the game. They were gracious, Sam, and they played the game.
You're right 100%. And I think these people believe somehow that they're privileged. You know, I look at the people that are for one world governments and globalism and all this kind of stuff. Klaus Schwab, Prescott, Bush of yesteryear, George Bush, these guys. And I've heard them say this, you know, they believe that somehow that they've been given kind of a position of lording over for our own safety and benefit. And NPR and some of these media people feel entitled like that too, to where they believe that, hey, they're God's greatest gift to the society, and without them, everything would melt down. I mean, would destroy ourselves if it wasn't for them. And they literally believe this kind of babble, right?
There's no doubt. And I've got some examples here just to prove my point, because everybody's like, well, Lance, Sam, you know, you're talking about NPR, but what do you mean they've got decades of deception? What do you mean they're NPR's most biased and fake stories? Well, I don't understand. Well, I'm going to give him some to you. First of all, let's start with this. The Hunter Biden laptop. They came out and said it equaled Russian disinfo. So NPR flatly refused to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story, claiming it was not a real story and it was a waste of time. Where's the retraction for that? Then they came out with the Trump-Russia collusion hoax. NPR ran story after story after story, Sam, promoting the now debunked Steele dossier, pushing that narrative, of course, that Trump was a Russian agent, right? Paid by Russia, manipulated by Russia, blah, blah, blah. Then they came out with the COVID lab leak theory and said that was total conspiracy theory. They mocked us. They discredited anyone suggested that COVID-19 was a lab leak from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. They labeled the idea as racist, right-wing, and dangerous misinformation. Now we know that the Department of Energy and FBI both acknowledged that the lab leak theory is very plausible and likely. Then, of course, they came out with all this
now,
gender
hold on. Let me be very clear. Hold on. I said from the start this vaccine was propaganda. It wasn't safe or effective. And I pointed to the 1986 law passed under Ronald Reagan. It's called the National Injury Compensation Fund, and where the taxpayer is forced to pay when things go wrong with vaccines to let the vaccine companies get off the hook. I highlighted this right from the very start of this COVID thing. And you know what they did? They deplatformed me. They basically shadow banned me, and they shut down everything that I had. I mean, I'm a pittance of what I was at one time because of what they've done. Okay, where's the reparations for that? Where's the even an apology at the least for that kind of stuff? But that's what they did. I was spot on right that whole time.
I mean, listen, and exactly right. And let me say that to you. This is my point. So they say, no, we didn't. No, we're neutral. Let's talk about the gender ideology as science. NPR has very aggressively promoted the idea that the biological sex is not a DNA thing. It is a social construct, and that men can become women and women can become men. Of course, they put in all kinds of dissenting medical or scientific perspectives that are completely baseless. They labeled parental concerns, about all the trans ideology in schools as far-right hysteria. So basically, they're going along with grooming. So you tell me how that isn't left-leaning. Then they go on January 6th. They called it an armed insurrection. They don't tell anybody the truth about the fact that it was a Fedsurrection. Now the FBI has confirmed no firearms were ever recovered from rioters that day. They also suppressed the coverage of all the FBI informants embedded in the crowd, which we know is true. How about the BLM riots, Sam? They said the BLM riots were mostly peaceful. There was no truth in that. There were violent attacks in over 140.
And the proof of the propaganda on that, Lance, was literally they had their reporters standing out there reporting that, hey, there's a few, blips of people not doing what's right, but don't worry, they're getting handled and arrested. For the most part, it's a peaceful demonstration. You literally see overturned cars and property burning to the ground in the background of their dishonest reporting in those. You literally
100%.
see it on TV.
140 cities were attacked. Billions of dollars in property damage, billions of dollars in looting, many businesses never recovered, and NPR called the protests overwhelmingly peaceful. Now, how about the censorship apologists that they are? They supported and they amplified calls to ban, censor, or shadow ban opposing viewpoints all over online, talking about all discrediting every individual that's out there. And then they talk about NPR's, the funding myths of NPR. That you talk about how the taxpayer pipeline really works. That public broadcaster receives $525 million in federal funding annually. That money flows to local public radios that use it to buy NPR programming and pay affiliate fees. Universities and government-owned outlets add millions more. And NPR benefits from tens of millions in indirect public money. And they talk about this 1% claim. I mean, this just goes on and on and on.
Well, here's the real question. If it was really 1%, Lance, would they be rioting, or would they just be like, fine, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, private sector funders, can you make up the 1% that the government's not paying anymore? But they know it's a huge amount, and that's why they're rioting and why they're suing and everything else. I want you to read a little bit of this report where I've got this NPR sues and put a press release out, because the details in this are riveting, Lance.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this suit is kind of a big deal, and I think that people aren't really paying attention, because why would they bring this suit if it wasn't for the fact that they thought they were going to win? And I'm going to pull it up here. Let me just read a few of the lines here.
It's money that's at the core, because if they were only getting 1%, they would never justify the money that it would take to bring a class action kind of across the country
100%.
multi-affiliate lawsuit. They wouldn't do it. There wouldn't be the money to do it.
Yeah. So I love this line of the executive order is a clear violation of the Constitution and the First Amendment's protections for freedom of speech and association and freedom of the press. This has nothing to do with freedom of speech. Here she is claiming that it's a clear violation of the First Amendment. The First Amendment doesn't say that we're going to pay media to enjoy their First Amendment. Doesn't say anything about that. There's nothing about a budget for First Amendment. It's an affront to the rights of NPR and NPR's 246 member stations, which are locally owned, nonprofit, non-commercial media organizations serving all 50 states and territories. Today, we challenge its constitutionality. Sam explained to me, I can't make the connection that she's trying to make here. Again, to me, this is more lying to the American public. How is it constitutionally
I'll explain. You ready?
Empowered that we have to pay these people to have news stations? Explain it to me, because I'm lost.
Possession is 9/10 of the law. Okay, so here's the deal. If I squat on 250 stations, and I've done so for decades, and you've funded my ability to do so, how dare you say I can't be there? How dare you say I don't have control or special privilege, permission, or whatever? It's on that premise. That's the only way to explain it, Lance. It's propaganda, but it's true. They've just literally squatted on the media, and they've been funded by government to do so. And then they would, in their press release, they then talk about Congress. Now, Congress, how dare Trump, fly in the face of Congress? Congress has no authority to spend my money, to rob Peter to pay Paul, to steal from my family wallet and your family wallet to fund these clowns in the media that have squatted. That's the story.
Yeah, and that's the point. I think you just nailed it. At the end of the day, this is exactly what's going on. You're right over the target on it. And this is continue how they operate. So this NPR document, she continues to go on here in a manner that I think is misleading. I think it's very misleading the way she's represented this, because I think at the end of the day, when you look at it from the way that she's presenting it, it's more of the same. She says, for decades, Congress, now listen to this, in its bipartisan fashion, promoted, supported, and protected the speech of all Americans, including NPR, our member stations, and other non-commercial radio stations. Now, she goes on here again to say that she's talking about the member stations. You're right. This is a manipulation. She's talking about the Broadcasting Act of 1967, recognizing the Broad Act as a free, high-quality, independent, non-commercial, and
Buddy,
educational
that's the
public
year
radio.
I was born. This Propaganda Act went in place. It's been in place for over 50 years.
Does it seem independent, non-commercial, and educational to you, Sam? Because it doesn't to me.
No, and that's the next question, too. How did they get the non-commercial stations where they claim that it's not, financially fueled, but they have all these foundations and the wording they use? They've crafted wording in legislation to get away with this, too. You and I have to go in the commercial world to make a living in broadcasting. These people don't even have to. They just get the non-coms, they get their foundations and their support, and then they act like they're just riding under the radar. And they've done it for over 50 years. 240 plus stations, ladies and gentlemen, and most of those stations are FM, so they've got translators everywhere. No wonder they have 40 plus million listeners. Hang tight.
Your daily Liberty News Wire. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it appears that Israel has killed senior Hamas leader Mohammed Sinwar in a recent Gaza airstrike. He's the brother of Yahya Sinwar, one of the masterminds of the October 2023 attack on Israel. He was killed by Israeli forces last year. The Trump administration's taking a closer look at foreign students who want to come to the U.S.
The State Department has halted the scheduling of new visa interviews for foreign students hoping to study in the U.S. while it prepares to expand the screening of their social media activity. The suspension is intended to be temporary and does not apply to applicants who have already previously scheduled interviews. The State Department says that the U.S. uses every available resource to vet people applying for visas. A downturn in enrollment of international students could hurt university budgets, as some institutions shifted to enrolling more international students who pay full-price tuition to make up for funding shortfalls. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
California temporarily changing the rules governing upcoming high school track and field championships.
The governing board for California high school sports is allowing more girls to participate in this weekend's state track and field championships. On Tuesday, President Trump threatened to pull federal funding in California if the state did not bar trans students from participating in girls' sports. The California Interscholastic Federation says it's extending access for more biological female athletes to participate in the championship meet. The change only applies to this weekend's competition. I'm Mike Hemp.
The Trump administration moving to cut $100 million worth of federal contracts for Harvard University. On Wall Street, the Dow down 90 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy and founder of Wesley Financial Group. And I want to set the record straight. I am not an attorney. I've never wanted to be an attorney. And the truth is, I really don't even like attorneys. If I sound like an attorney, I apologize. But what I've learned in my 15 years in the timeshare cancellation business is you don't need to be an attorney to get folks out of their timeshare. At Wesley, we've helped over 40,000 families cancel their timeshare, and I want to share with you how we do it. Just give my office a call. I guarantee if we take you as a client, we'll get you out of your timeshare, or you'll pay nothing. Attorneys, this was meant to be funny, so please don't sue me, especially my friend Kenneth from Black River Falls, Wisconsin.
Call now for your free timeshare exit info kit. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454.
Now, Mr. and Mrs. Sir Galahad, what seems to be the problem?
Well, it's just not working.
She's been very unrealistic. Really?
Ever since he rescued me from the dragon, we've been drifting apart.
That's not true.
We were supposed to live happily ever after.
Now, this isn't a fairy tale.
At first he was gallant and chivalrous, opening doors for me, holding my chair, taking my arm.
All right, I'm not as young as I used to be.
He simply isn't the man who swept me off my feet.
Well, you're not as young as you used to be. Mr. Sir Galahad, maybe if you started by just holding Mrs. Sir Galahad's hand when you're together.
Really?
Yes, try it.
Okay.
All right, go on, take her hand. Careful, little oil.
Marriage. You're never too far apart when you're still holding hands. From your neighbors, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Now, look into each other's eyes. That's right, raise your visor.
Oh, they're blue, dear.
For more tips on strengthening your marriage, visit family.mormon.org.
Introducing Managed IT Services from NPI. We offer top-notch data backup and recovery, email spam protection, and network security tailored to your needs and budget. With 20-plus years of experience in the medical field, our HIPAA-certified consultants know what it takes to protect sensitive information. Don't settle for less. Give us a call at 801-706-6980 and experience the difference with Managed IT Services. Remember, your IT support should be fast, efficient, and reliable.
Introducing PrepStartsNow.com, your ultimate guide to readiness and peace of mind. We offer practical preparedness tools, training, and education to take your family's household readiness to the next level. Browse the prep shop for essential products, check out our planning guides, and stay informed with our prep blog. Visit PrepStartsNow.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive offers, new products, and future events. Remember, preparedness begins with PrepStartsNow.com.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
So the propaganda from National Public Radio, NPR, is legendary. And they have lied about so many different things. The Biden laptop disinfo, the Russia collusion hoax, the COVID lab leak lies, gender ideology is science, January 6th with an armed insurrection. Anyway, they basically have amplified this. One of the other lies they've told forever, too, is this global warming lie, this climate change. They said it was global cooling in the 70s. Now they say it's global warming, and then they got caught at all that, and then they said it's climate change. And what they've tried to do is say, if you even speak out against climate change, they should arrest you. And that's how far they've gone with that one. But I bring this up because they're not only propaganda in their reporting, but they're propaganda in how they get their funding, which we've covered a little bit too. But they're also propaganda in how they advertise. So the way they get their funding and their advertising, not counting government money that Trump stopped, thank heavens, but they play games with words. So you and I are in the commercial realm of commercial radio, and we can just flat out plug people and promote people. And, hey, it's advertising pure and simple. We get paid to promote them. They know that. We know that. Everybody knows that. But in the world of non-coms or non-commercial radio, here's how it's done. They pretend that they're not really getting funding, that they're just kind of giving you a fact. And so let's say that I do this program with Lance. Then at the end I go, this broadcast is brought to you by the Hard-Hitting Foundation. I'm making this up. So the Hard-Hitting Foundation. Learn more about the Hard-Hitting Foundation at hardhitting.org. Also brought to you by the such and such group. If you want to learn about insurance and the financial insurance group, go to financialinsurancegroup.org. And so what they do is they're not allowed to, quote, pitch or promote products. So what they do is they lay it down in kind of a factual statement. And the way they've done this is they've literally created legislation over the years. They've been at this for over 50 years. And the legislation basically says, look, you can't do clear call to actions. You've got to do kind of polite recommendations. So this is brought to you by the something whatever park. To learn more about the park, go here or whatever. And it's not a call to action. You're not allowed to blatantly advertise. But they've done that because it allows them to pretend they're above the fray, above reproach. We don't take funding. We don't do advertising like the bad commercial guys over there. No, we're more above that, and they play games, and there's a whole rule of guidelines. If you own a non-com commercial radio station that you have to follow these rules, and you can get busted and fined if you don't. But they've managed to get all these. Just so you know, this is brought to you by the Bill Gates Foundation. If you want to learn about helping people with clean water around the world, go to the BillGatesFoundation.com and help with clean water. Or learn about clean water. See, they can say that, but it's all propaganda. It's all pretending they're not promoting or advertising, but they are. But they manipulate the language to make you believe that they're somehow above that fray, Lance. That's critical to understand.
Yeah, and I think you bring such a valid point out. And to me, what I think's tricky about the whole thing, what I really think it is that we're lucky that you know that. I didn't even know that, what you just said about advertising. And that's why a show like yours is so important. And I think a show like ours is so important because we're exposing the truth. But at the end of the day, it makes it very difficult when these other groups we're going up against are so well funded that they have got such a deep pocket of capital. It makes it very difficult for us to combat what they're doing because they've also come up with a very organized system. When you look
the
at
other
it,
wrinkle, Lance?
I'm sorry.
Not only they have done that with funding, as you wisely point out, but let me explain the real repercussions of this, which people don't know, and this is why I want to bring this up. Let's say that I want a non-commercial radio station to carry my radio show. You know what their response will be?
Go ahead. I'm waiting.
I can't take your show, Lance, because it's commercial. You're going to run commercials, right? No, we don't run commercials. We don't do commercials like that. We're a non-commercial radio station. We're non-com. And so unless you reformat your radio program specifically for those stations and find some filler to deal with all the breaks that we have, then they won't even be able to take your show, and they got a great excuse not to take it. Now, there's a friend of mine by the name of Tom Hartman. Tom is Thom. Tom Hartman. And he's a liberal broadcaster. But the reason he's my friend is because he's actually an honest liberal broadcaster. And he's honest because he's had, people like Richard Mack on his shows, and he's been on my show. And so he's honest about it. But I've watched him in his studio. I've literally gone to Washington, D.C. and been in his studio with him. And what he does is he basically formats it for commercial radio and then formats it for these non-coms too. And he plays these special things that are allowed to fulfill all the rules of the non-coms, and he's on both. But most stations that are non-com, they'll be like, no, we can't take your show, Lance, because your show's commercial. And that gives them this above the fray scenario. It's like, you just stay with those advertisers where you guys, have to beg for money. We don't do that over here. See, it's that, and so that it becomes an impediment. And so even if NPR wanted to take our show, they couldn't unless somebody reformatted it specifically for them.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing about it. That's an uneven playing field. At the end of the day, here you are trying to run a business. You're trying to run it efficiently. And you're trying to do something that you believe is a true value-added service. And it is, because you're providing the truth. But here's NPR being rewarded. Here's PBS being rewarded. Here are those social media influencers that are paid, that are being rewarded to disseminate fake news, to lie to the American public. How does that system seem balanced or fair in any way when you realize that it's difficult to compete? There's this guy online, his name's Bill Kristol, and it recently came out that USAID paid him an excessive amount of money. And I used to look at his posts and think, Sam, if you ask me, like, what do you think about Bill Kristol? I'll be like, I just can't understand how this guy can post so much negativity all day long and it doesn't impact his soul. Because it's hard to be negative. Even we're doing what we're doing. We're in these news cycles and we're looking at the news that's out there, and it's sometimes very depressing. You got to read everything.
Yes, it is.
God, I don't even want to tell
the way
these
he
stories.
does it is he has plenty of money, though, and half of it he's not even posting.
Wait a minute. I was about to say that. Turns out Bill
sorry.
Kristol was paid $8 million by USAID. Now, I never figured out if that was annually.
Woohoo!
But $8 million. So, of course, he can post negatively. He just hires somebody for $50 or $100 a year, and they just put out garbage all day long, and he sits on the beach and collects his $8 million.
Yeah, dude. That's beautiful, right? It's a good thing. Not. Okay, and that's the problem that they have. And then, so if I were to promote something, I'd be like, hey, go and buy Lance's product. Lance has an herbal product that's incredible for you. Go buy it today. Here's the website. Buy it. They won't do that. They'll be like, learn about the value of herbs at lanceherbs.com. You can learn about herbs at lanceherbs.com. And see, they didn't promote anything. They just wanted you to learn, see? Their education there, Lance, don't you know?
Yeah, and that's my point. That is what they're supposed to be doing. But it's so unreasonable about the way that they do it. And I think it's so unreasonable for America and the people because they don't know any better. They're being lied to. And I got to tell you something. It's just, this is a media circus, and it just never stops.
All right, you want the latest in it? They're launching new services, too. So as soon as you defund or whatever platform, NPR on this altar, they got another one coming your way, buddy.
Oh, I guarantee it.
It just started not too long ago. And guess who's behind it? iHeartMedia. I kid you not. I kid you not.
Tell me this story. I definitely want to hear this.
iHeartMedia just created the Black Information Network not that long ago. And the Black Information Network is called Black News First.
So you're telling me that product is an iHeartRadio, iHeartMedia product?
Yeah, buddy.
Wow. I had no idea. I looked at it because you brought it up.
You look at this thing and it's insanity. So and I heard this, how I found out about this, I heard this literally on a radio station. And I'm like, wait a minute. Black News First is what they say. And it's basically black news for the black community. It's accuracy, truth, honor, all these things for the black community. And I thought about that, and I thought, what if, so it's called BIN. BIN, B-I-N, Black News Information. BINnews.com. And these people literally promote news for blacks. And now I don't have a problem with black people creating their own news. But what if I created the White Information Network? I just call it WIN.
I was just about to say that, Sam. So I'm assuming since they created that, they've also got the white version. Is that right?
No. That's the problem. Absolutely.
Because we're going to need the Asian version, too.
The Asians can have a version. The whites just can't.
It'll be called Yellow News Media. Yellow News Media.
Oh, stop. This is the problem with this. And so, listen, they say that you and I have lorded over and propagandized and abused everybody for so long. I mean, you don't deserve your own white news network. And the NAACP is another example of this. First off, they call it colored people, which I thought that was a term that was not even used anymore, but they're allowed to use it. But what if I created the white AACP or whatever it is, Okay, this is crazy. And so this iHeartMedia group or whatever, they say because truth matters. That's their tagline. Go ahead and skip the break. That's their tagline for this Black Information Network, because truth matters.
I think we better file a suit right away. Like I said, we need the yellow news media. We're going to need the light brown news media, right? We'll need the white news media.
Right.
We better sue iHeart and say it's a First Amendment violation that they haven't equally balanced the presentation of products.
But I want you to put a piece of paper up to my skin or your skin, and we're pretty dark compared to the white paper. So I think it'll be called the off-white.
I think that's a good point. I think I'm Italian and I'm Sicilian, so I'm a little bit brown. So I think that I'm going to go with the light brown network for myself.
That's good. And I'm going to basically change what network I'm affiliated with. When it's summer and I get a tan, I'm a little different than when it's winter and I'm not as tan. And the point we're making, folks, is this is insanity. I mean, what on earth? So even when you defund some of these people, the question becomes, where does iHeartMedia get their money? Right? And where does it's just interesting. And so this black network and stuff, I just listened to it. Man, I mean, it's just propaganda to the biggest. Did you go to their website, binnews.com?
I did.
What do you think?
I think it's very one-sided. I don't think
one-sided, huh?
Yeah, I don't think it's neutral territory.
All right, there you have it.
Let me put it this way: if I'm Moody's, I'm giving them like a C minus, maybe even a D.
Yeah, I just want to know where they're getting their funding from, though. That's what I really want to know.
Well,
all right, good news.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just
right.
having all these. I'm having all these thoughts, Sam.
You are because when you hear about it, I mean, every American should be incensed about this. But literally, their whole time, right there on the radio, they're like, "This is the Black News Information Network, and it's Black News first." Did you know there was such thing as Black News?
No, I thought it was just news. I mean, I don't actually figure out. I don't do like a news balance. Like, okay, I need so many black stories and I need so many white stories and then I need some yellow stories. I don't separate my news. It's based on what I think is important in the news cycle, and there's no racial profiling on the big show.
I got an idea. How about American news?
How about it? I thought we were all Americans. I didn't think that the priority was, but of course, division and chaos is a tool of the left. Division and chaos is a tool of the global elites. They don't want any kind of unification. They don't want people to think of themselves as Americans. They want people to think of themselves as black, white, yellow, purple. They want them to think about themselves as their religious bias. That's what they promote. Because, of course, if we united, there'd be 300 plus million of us, and I'm talking about the legal individuals here in the United States, there'd be 300 plus million of us versus 535 in the executive branch in D.C., and then what, a couple of dozen, justices we'd have to worry about? I mean, the numbers are overwhelming if we would just unite and stop bickering over gender, race, and religion.
Amen. What if we created the Illegal Alien News Network, though?
Yeah,
you know
I think it's great. I think we can make a lot of money. We'd just probably get a lot of government funding for that.
Yeah, would get special protection. Our people could cross the border and report without any repercussions. I mean, it would be just fantastic.
Yeah.
This is insane, people, and that's what we're trying to highlight. Look, news should be news for everybody, and I don't care if it's a black person that's leading the news or in the news or a white person that's in the news or leading the news. Or I think we're all God's children, and we ought to act like it personally. But to that, because I say that, I'm a racist,
Yeah, you're horrible, Sam. You're a horrible human being. But, of course, that's because you tell the truth. You're over the target. You're a conspiracy theorist that isn't a truth teller. You're a danger to our democracy.
Oh, boy. All I can tell you is when conspiracy meets fact, there you go. Okay, we got a great news piece to end the hour, right?
Yeah, I think it's just interesting. I've always wondered how this works. And now I guess I didn't realize that we were, and I'm not sure. Listen, I want to preface this. I don't know whether or not to feel like maybe I'm being unfair here, but I feel like this is odd that he decided to give these specific people pardons. I don't know if you're familiar with these guys. Have you ever seen this reality show, Sam? Have you ever seen it?
I haven't, no. But I see it in the headline. It says white collar. I'm kind of concerned about that.
Yeah, it became very popular. And white collar, exactly. It became really popular. The Christies, it was a family show. The guy was like, I think he invested in real estate. And I think Trump has shocked a lot of people with this pardon. The DOJ seems to be shocked about it, as does Hollywood. He just gave a full pardon to the reality TV stars Todd and Julie Chrisley. And of course, they had that hit show. It was called Chrisley Knows Best. So Chrisley was given a 12-year federal sentence, and his wife was given a 7-year sentence. And they were both convicted for bank fraud and tax evasion. Supposedly, it was a multi-million-dollar scheme involving fake financial documents and hidden income. Now, both of them have served less than 2 years behind bars, but of course, I don't know about this one. How do you feel about this? I don't feel warm and fuzzy about this one. I don't know whether the Chrisleys were guilty. I don't really know their case. I remember it being publicized. I kind of thought, okay, well, supposedly they were killing it and they were dodging the IRS. How do you feel about this for a pardon right out of the gate here early in the administration?
Well, first off, when the IRS is a criminal enterprise and it's not constitutional at all, I said, shut that sucker down, Donald. Yesterday would be better. But here's what Trump basically says, and I think there's some validity to his point. He says this: Todd and Christie were made examples of by an out-of-control justice system more focused on headlines than fairness. I think that's really true for the most part. I also think we're the greatest prisoner nation in the world, and I think that's got to stop. And so I really appreciate this reform. Even if they committed the crimes they say, they don't belong behind bars. They belong paying taxes. And if there's a way to take non-criminals out of prison, and when I say non-criminals, I mean violent kind of whatever, they're not a threat to me or to society. Why should they be on the public dole and I have to pay for their prison when they could be making money and paying taxes? And so could there be some repercussions? Yes, but the nature of the penalty needs to match the nature of the crime. And people that are not violent or a threat to others shouldn't be in prison. There's other ways to deal with that, right?
Well, I will tell you this. I agree with you on the tax system. I don't believe in income tax. I don't believe in what they're doing. I think the tax system's, a false entity. It's a collection arm of the Federal Reserve Bank. So, yeah, I believe that to be true. And yeah, I'm sure that they were attacked because they were public figures. And you're right. They probably could have done a better job had they not ruined their show. Maybe they could have figured out a way to collect on this alleged, income that wasn't reported. They're saying that they defrauded banks of over $30 million. I don't know if that's true. The banking logs are pretty manipulative also. So, I think those are all valid points. I'm just always concerned that when when I see pardons early in an administration with what I would consider well-known public figures, these guys were pretty well-known. Their show was pretty popular. I'm not sure what the message, if that's a good message to send. I'm not saying they deserve to sit in there. I'm not saying that the DOJ wasn't excessive, because the DOJ is a weaponized institution. I'm very uncomfortable with what's going on inside the DOJ and in our own judiciary. But I don't know about the message this sends, that because you're a well-known figure, your pardon gets considered. Because I got to tell you, Sam, there's a lot of regular Americans sitting in prison for excessive sentences, also for IRS issues.
So I 100% agree with your point. And so rather than say, hey, they're big media personality or entertainers, they're going to get special celebrity privilege and the others don't, I agree with you. That shouldn't happen. However, what we should do is we should say, all right, anybody with IRS crimes or IRS problems or whatever you want to call it, that are not violent, let them out too. So my buddy Steve Stockman, former congressman, he was a congressman twice in Texas, he's an example of this. But why not give full pardons to all these people? Why do we want to put these people in prison on the public dime? We could save a ton of money and provide leadership in the world about freedom rather than prison. Why would any of these people that aren't violent be in? So rather than say, don't give them a pardon, I would say give them a pardon. But let's now extend that. And so Steve Stockman has promoted this idea that says, why don't we have Good Friday every Friday? And why don't we have a private group of citizens that can vet these cases for Trump? And every Friday he could just start pardoning peaceful people that, hey, maybe they did something wrong. I'm not here to debate that. I'm just here to say the crime needs to, be appropriately matched with the sentence or the penalty. And most of these people, if they're not violent, why would they be in prison? What value is that? Give them an ankle bracelet, let them be from home, or give them some way that they can pay back their debt to society and get through it. But hey, taking them off the taxpayer rolls and putting them on the dole, it costs about $50,000 a year per prisoner. Just think how much money we could save.
You're actually low on the federal numbers. They say the federal cost right now for an inmate is somewhere between $80,000 and $96,000.
Yeah, it's cheaper on some of the local levels, but yeah.
So the local
why
states
not
are
turn
definitely
those?
cheaper.
Let's just say it's $50,000 to make the number simple, though. If I could be making money and paying $5,000 a year in taxes versus $50,000 I'm sucking on the taxpayer's teeth, think about that difference per person: 55, 60, 100 grand. I don't know the number, and the number exactly isn't important. But the point is, which is, what are we doing? When is this going to change? So let this grease the skids or set the opportunity for the average Joe, like my buddy Ken Cromar, that's not a celebrity. He's in prison for IRS things. He's the most peaceful guy I know. He shouldn't be in prison at all.
And the federal system the federal system is handing out excessive sentences. Those sentencing guidelines took away a lot of adjudication, and in my opinion, and then they came out with some cases, Booker and Fan, were supposed to help with adjudication, but it really didn't. The judges took it as an opportunity to sentence people for even bigger sentences. I think the sentencing guidelines are out of control, especially for first-time offenders. The feds have been over-sentencing people for a very long time. There's no consideration for, is there a better way to do this, or could probation be the solution? On top of the fact that there's no system in place for the federal system that for somebody after a certain amount of time could have their sentence expunged or purged from the system or sealed. Many states offer that, but the Fed doesn't. So people that have been charged federally have to live with that for their entire lives. And I believe it's intentional.
Yeah, they're felons. They can never get their rights back. They can never own a gun. They can't vote. And Trump's even in that category, right?
Right. Which, if you think about it, it's just beyond ridiculous. Well, Trump hasn't been federally. Oh, I guess he was. Yeah, you're right. I take that back.
See? Anyway, all I'm saying is that at some point I believe in true forgiveness, and I believe in true ability to repent and change and true restoration, or whatever you want to call it, where, hey, at some point if you pay back your debt to society, why don't you get your full rights back? Why are you a sub-citizen forever? That's a problem, too.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. They don't care. And even with the cases, I can tell you this. I want to give you an interesting statistic here that you may not know. If you've been convicted and you file a case because you found prosecutorial misconduct, do you know that there's no amount of time where the judge needs to rule? Your speedy trial rate goes out the door after conviction.
So that's insane too.
The judge has no requirement to rule on anything you file within a certain amount of time.
See, that's got to stop. We got a lot of reform there. I'm calling Kim Kardashian to fund us and help us lead this thing.
Exactly. Well, she's got a lot. If you put out a porn, I guess you can go ahead and make a lot of money. That's how America works. Either that or you get funded by the USAID or the New Group.
What if you promote God, family, and country and protect life, liberty, and property, and you do it on your own time?
Yeah. Yeah, that's not going to do anything.
That is the Big Mig, ladies and gentlemen. That is Liberty Roundtable Live. I'll tell you that right now. Check out the Big Mig, thebigmig.com. Incredible talk show on the weekends, libertynewsradio.com. Check it out. Also, their incredible talk show on Rumble and X and just about everywhere else. Check out their financial shows as well on Fridays, Thursdays, Wednesdays. Great shows. The Big Mig brothers, ladies and gentlemen. Lance Miliacho, George Ballantine. Thank you, Lance.
Hey, thank you for having me, Sam.
And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Hard-hitting talk. God save our republic.